You know, I'm stupid. I didn't stick around, obviously. So, anyway, they're probably better off without me. I was going to say, you know, I'm looking at this title here, and I was trying to figure out, how do I give you something that you can take away based on about 40 years of coaching experience here? Or is there anything, you know, really that I want to get across to you that might be of value to you? And as I was thinking about it, I thought, hell, don't listen to me. That would be the best thing you could probably do. But you know, I'm old school, obviously. But, you know, I thoroughly enjoy this profession. And one of the reasons why I do is because our only purpose, really, is to help other people get better. And so right now I'm talking to a lot of people right now whose only purpose is to help other people get better. And that's a great scenario right there. I really respect that. And so thank you for, you know, allowing me to come here and spend time with you. I was with the Spurs for 17 years. I had 4 rings. It was a great experience. I also coached on the high school level, Grand Island Northwest High School. So I've got a kind of a rainbow of experience here of different types of athletes, different types of scenarios. And I'm going to try to throw out all of those to you today a little bit, and hopefully you can utilize some of that. But let me see here. Here we go. When I was at Northwest, all of the sports that we had at Northwest High School were required to lift. Okay. We developed a strength and conditioning curriculum, actually. So we had weight classes that they actually got grades in. And we were one of the first in the country to do that. And we were regarded as one of the top athletic programs in the state throughout the 1980s at that point in time. You know, we had state championships in football, track, basketball, and so on. So it was a great run for that program. And a lot of it we would attribute to the fact that we had a solid and structured strength and conditioning program. Now, what are we trying to accomplish? Right? Well, you know, people get scared to death when we throw something like this up there. Right? Or, you know, this here. Well, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Okay? We're trying to get better. And we want to enhance performance. And it's all about movement, explosion, power, agility. Those are the components. Okay? Now, I got to tell you, the first question I always get asked is, how'd you get a job in the NBA? All right? Well, I'll tell you the story. This is the scoop right here. Back in 1989, Larry Brown actually brought me into the Spurs during camp because David Robinson was going to be a rookie that year, and they would not hire a full-time strength coach. So I went there for 2 weeks, and we set him up on programs, and I got to meet Larry, obviously, and R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich and that whole crew because they were his assistants at the time. And so anyway, Larry ends up leaving. He goes to the Clippers, and Pop leaves and goes with Don Nelson up to Golden State, and R.C. goes to the University of Florida. And about 2 years after that, I get this call from Pop. Well, it was more than 2 years after that. It was about 4 years after that, 5 years after that. I get a call from Pop, and he says, Brungy, he says, they've hired me as the GM down in San Antonio, and I'm going to hire a full-time strength coach. He says, are you interested? And I said, sure. Well, I happened to be living in Aspen at that time. Tough place to live. And he says, well, I'm going to be in Aspen tomorrow. Can you meet me at, there's a restaurant called Carnivale. It was an Italian place. He said, meet me there at 8 o'clock. So I said, sure. So I meet him there, and he's got Don Nelson with him. And we start eating and all this stuff, and we're talking, and Nellie's quizzing me, and Pop's quizzing me, and all of a sudden Nellie just goes, he says, well, Pop, just hire the guy. He says, you ain't going to find anybody better. And Pop says, well, okay, you're hired. So what do I got to pay you? And I said, well, you know, I can't leave for this, you know, da-da-da-da-da. And he says, well, that's a little more than what I had budgeted, but he says, hell, I'm the GM. I might as well, hey, I can do that. And he says, so, you know, we're going through all that stuff, and all of a sudden, you know, I leave later on, and I wake up the next morning, I get this phone call, and these guys are drinking wine all night, by the way. All right? So I get this phone call from Pop, and Pop goes, "Brungy." I said, "Yeah, Pop, how you doing?" He says, "Did I hire you last night?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, what did I agree to pay you?" I didn't lie to him or anything like that. So the moral to the story is this. If you want to get into the NBA, make sure whoever you're getting interviewed by, you get them good and drunk while that's happening, okay? You got a great chance then. All right. Okay, this is my mentor right here. And if you don't know your history of strength and conditioning, you ought to update yourself on it, because this is the guy who really, one of the forefronts of strength and conditioning. The guy's name is Alvin Roy. And Alvin Roy was a guy who was a little dinky guy at Baton Rouge, out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He wasn't very tall. He was a pretty good pole vaulter. He liked basketball too, actually. He walked on the basketball program at LSU and actually made the team. Okay, he's about 5'6", which is kind of strange, you know. But he, growing up, never believed in lifting weights. This is way back. You know, this is before the war. He thought, well, it makes you slower, it makes you less flexible, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so he goes away, World War II, he's over in Europe. He's in Germany at the end of the war, and he gets involved with all of these different productions that the U.S. is trying to do, kind of propaganda things to, you know, they call them the Allied Games. He starts to help promote these Allied Games. And basically, he got hooked in with Bob Hoffman, who was the Olympic strength coach at the time, or the Olympic weightlifting coach. And he's watching these guys, and he has this epiphany. And he realizes these guys are strong, they're flexible, they can explode out of the building. There's something to this. And he decided this is going to be my thing. So he went back to Baton Rouge, he opened up a gym. Bob Hoffman helped him with a lot of stuff when he came back. He had a TV program on, just like Jack LaLanne, but it was mainly local. It's called Future Stars of Tomorrow. But he kept trying to get his high school, his Struma High School there in Baton Rouge, to lift weights for their football program. And they wouldn't do it because they had the same attitude. It's going to slow our guys down. It's going to make them too muscle-bound, that type of thing. And all of a sudden, though, they had this horrible year, and they got beat bad by Baton Rouge High School. And the two brothers there, the football coach and the principal, Big Fuzzy and Little Fuzzy is what they call them, were also, they grew up with Alvin, and they finally said, "Okay, Alvin, do your thing." So he bought the weights from York, and they delivered them, and he started lifting these guys. There was only one condition. You cannot have Billy Cannon lift any weights, because he's our best athlete, he's a great sprinter, we can't make him slower. So he said, okay. And that spring, Billy Cannon won the Louisiana State Championship in the 100-yard dash, ran like a 9.9, 9.8, somewhere in there. So summer comes around, and Billy's looking at all of his buddies are lifting. And he wants to get in on this stuff. Finally, he comes to Alvin, he says, can I get in on this? And Alvin says, "Yeah, just don't tell anybody." So in he goes. That fall, they win the state championship in football. The next spring, Billy Cannon beats his former time by 0.2 of a second, okay? Throws everything out the window, right? He gets stronger, faster, all of these things. He goes on, he's a Heisman Trophy winner at LSU, plays pro football and all this. And that was kind of how Alvin got hooked up with LSU when they won the national championship. Then he went to the San Diego Chargers. Then he went to the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's when I got to meet him, because my dad was actually in Germany at the time that he was, and they were friends over there. And so my dad hooked me up between my junior and senior year in high school, football. I got to go up and work out with the Kansas City Chiefs up in Swope Park out there and outdoors. They'd work out, okay? And so that was my introduction to all of this. And it made a tremendous impact on me, because when I left, I said, if I ever coached, strength and conditioning would be a major part of any program that I had. And that's the way I've followed through for the rest of my life. But here's the thing that I liked about Alvin. He says, I don't care what you look like. I care about how you move, how you explode and compete, all right? It's not about the muscle guy, right? It's about how fast am I? How can I explode? How can I get from here to there? And so on and so forth. And so those are the things we're trying to enhance here. And so as we get into that then, I think there's three important things here that we want to look at, okay? Testing, training, and recovery. Those are the three fundamentals, okay? And I'm a big proponent of fundamentals because I see a lot of things, you know, what's the new sexy idea in strength and conditioning this week or next week or this year or next year or whatever the situation might be. I mean, it's all over the place, all right? And there's merit to some of it, and some of it's just crazy, and some of it just has a place or a piece of the puzzle. But the fundamentals can't be a piece of the puzzle. The fundamentals are the puzzle. They have to be the biggest part of what you do. And if you ignore them, you're screwed. Now, the problem with fundamentals are they aren't sexy, all right? They're not the new wave, but they're the things that work, all right? They're the proven components that make a difference as far as improving strength, power, explosion, flexibility, agility, all of those components. So, when we look at that then, if I'm going to tell you one thing to take away, you got to have a philosophy. If you don't have a philosophy to what you're doing, I don't think you're going to succeed in the long run because you're going to be all over the board. You're going to change with the wind. If you change, if you go to a clinic, now I can tell you another story, but I don't have time to tell you all these stories, but just a learning process for me. But if you go to a clinic and all of a sudden you want to change 70% of your program because you just went to this clinic, you don't have a philosophy. You never had a program, right? If you're changing more than 5 or 10% based off of a clinic, you don't have a philosophy. You find bits and pieces out of every clinic, out of every seminar, and you work those into your philosophy. But don't ever go away from your philosophy, if it's the right philosophy anyway. And I believe in certain aspects here, and the fundamentals that I believe in have always worked for me, and they always will. Okay? So, testing. Let's talk about testing. I've got an imponderable for you. You guys remember Jack Handey on Saturday Night Live and all the deep thoughts by Jack Handey? Okay. So if quizzes are quizzical, what are tests? I'm not going to go any further than that, but I just wanted to throw that out. Okay. All right. Testing establishes baselines. Now that's important because if we get an athlete that is injured at some point in time, we want to know what their baseline is so that when we're bringing them back, where are they? Are they at 70%? Are they at 80%? So on and so forth. So baselines are very important. Work your percentages off of those. You work your percentages off of maxes, for example. So they're important from that standpoint. We set our goals off of our testing. In other words, we can set goals all we want, but if we don't know where we're at, our goals may not be very accurate. It's good goals are set off of knowing exactly where you are right now. Okay? So that's important to establish that. And testing can be motivational because it gives people things that they want to achieve and also can put them into categories. There's ways to categorize testing that helps them see where they're at and where they want to get to and so on. Okay? Now, team, training, evaluation, accountability, motivation, these are all part of a system called BAM testing. Now, this is a technology testing group, and I'm just throwing them out there. There's a bunch of them out there, okay? So I'm not going to say, okay, this one's better than the other, da-da-da. I know this group because they do the Chicago pre-draft camp, and they do Euro camp, and they do Portsmouth Invitational, and they do Adidas Nations camps and things like that. So I'm familiar with them, and basically it's all the gated stuff that you see. It's all exact testing. It's exact times, so there's no stopwatch or any of that aspect, okay? And I like that because, you know, we don't get the full picture when we're trying to do it manually, although sometimes we have to. I understand that, okay? Technology testing gives you the correct test scores. In this particular test or case with the BAM testing, they compare it to other athletes, and that's motivational because they have this huge database of athletes that they can compare with. And their chart puts athletes in a category which is motivational and also helps with evaluation. And so, you know, all those things get your athletes excited about different things, but the downside is the cost for a lot of people because you have to bring them in and have to use it. Now, I know that some of these groups have ways of using this as a fundraiser for your program, though, so I'm just throwing these things out as possible ideas, maybe. You could use it as a fundraiser for your program, actually, to do testing, and you bring in other schools, or you bring in, you know, rec people, or you even bring in weekend warriors because they want to know where they stand, and so on and so forth. So, to raise money. All right. Whether you use technology testing or not, testing has to be a part of your program. Okay? It's got to be there because you got to know where you are, you got to know where you want to get to, and you got to confirm that you got there. All right? Testing is only as valid as your adherence to the protocols. You must be strict. Now, this is where we run into a lot of problems. Okay? If you're not strict with the protocols of your tests, then you can throw them all out the window. If you're letting people shuffle their feet on a vertical, on a no-step vertical, it's not valid. It's got to be a solid foot placement, and they've got to go from there. Otherwise, you're comparing different people, you know, your different results with different types of standards. You have to be strict, adhere to all the protocols of your tests. Very, very important. Okay? So, if we're going to look at this now, for example, in the NBA, we do the lane shuttle here. Let's see what we got here. Oops, clicking the wrong one there. There we go. Help me, Dave. Or Mike. Wrong thing. Michael, can you help me for a second? Is Mike here still? I'll get to it here in a second, but I definitely want to show you some of the video I've got here. So anyway, training. We'll move on to training, and I'll show you the lane agility here in a second. But if we look at training, I often think of, you know, about a little over a couple of decades, well, not quite that long, but well over a decade ago, Major League Baseball had, you know, had their lockout, and they lost a whole season with their lockout. And when they came back the next year, they basically, you know, the attendance was really poor. And so this reporter goes up to Yogi Berra, and he says, Yogi, he says, why do you think attendance is down? Do you think it's because of the lockout? And Yogi kind of thinks for a second. He says, no, he says, I think it's because people aren't coming to the ballpark. All right? So, hey, Michael, can you help me for a second up here? I apologize. So anyway, the truth of the matter is, though, is sometimes, you know, the simplest answer is the best answer, okay? And here we go. We don't let all the novel new gurus or devices drastically alter what you do because we're inundated with them all the time, okay? Fundamentals are fundamentals because they work. These are the pieces of the puzzle that you might want to add. The only problem is there are pieces that you want to add, but the only problem is time. Now, our biggest problem here is time. Can you show me how to do the video thing here because I'm messing it up again on that? Yeah, well, no, it's a different one, but I'm touching the wrong button or something on it. So time is the problem. Now, we've got so many minutes in the day that we can use our programming, okay? And we got to focus on what's the most important aspects. And if you're adding stuff all the time, you ain't got time for all that stuff. So you got to figure out what do I have time for, what do I prioritize, and so on and so forth. So if we were going to go back here, yeah.
Oh, this one. Huh?
Which one are you hitting there on that? I thought I hit that.
It's running. You see it running here.
Yeah. Well, did you hit this right here? You hit that?
No, I clicked right.
Oh, left. Okay. All right.
It's slow, but it's running.
It's
kind of like you and I.
Yeah, it's a little. it's not really. Yeah. Anyway, this is the lane shuttle here as we're talking on this stuff. We'll just go ahead and move on. All right. So I got another one here. Let's see if I can actually do this right. All right. Okay. That's Manu Ginobili right there. It's nothing special. We're just doing a hang clean. All right. It's in season. You see our practice facility? We got a lot of platforms in there. All right. What is the core of my philosophy? The core of my philosophy is it starts on the platform and it works out from there. okay? I'm not trying to make guys Olympic lifters. I'm trying to utilize the Olympic lifts to make them better players, okay? Which means I probably will make some adaptations off of techniques and different things like that. So for example, with this group of people and the anthropometrics that we're talking about here, the lever systems, I'm not going to teach them to catch in a squat, bounce down into a squat, just because it scares the heck out of me. Now, we're going to deep squat, but we're just not going to catch in the deep squat. We're not going to bounce down into the deep squat, okay? We're going to catch in the power position. From there, we'll front squat. If we're going to do a front squat, heel to butt, if we can get heel to butt. I want to go heel to butt because of the hamstrings, the glutes, everything engaged there. It's so important to power, and also the flexibility, okay? But if you're going to ask me what is the core of my program, the core of my program is right here. It's the Olympic lifts. I always adhere to the fact that we start from the ground up, the inside out, and that's what we do. So we're going to train this, and we're going to move out from here. Okay? Now, the other thing that I like about these is if I want to try to get something accomplished in a short period of time in season and cover a lot of territory, I can do combo lifts here, and I've got basically, I'm training every muscle group, but I'm training them with power and explosion, and I'm training those components, right? And so, as a result of that, I'm able to accomplish a lot in about 15 to 20 minutes that if I want to try to do other things, it's going to take me a lot longer to do. And the guy you just saw there was actually a graduate student of Mike's in Baylor at one point in time. He was an intern for me. But the multi-complex lifts like that allow you to train the athlete the way the athlete plays. They play from the ground all the way up. It's that whole kinetic chain. It's all about explosion, power. It's all in basketball, if you want to look at it, for example, that whole jumping motion, and if you go into the snatch, that finish, blocking, rebounding, all of those aspects like that, you've just trained a basketball player. By the way, one of the guys that Alvin Roy trained at LSU was Bob Pettit. Great NBA player for a lot of years, right? All in the Olympic lifts. So I really believe in that concept. Now, functional training. We hear this all the time. And so you've got my thoughts are right there in front of you, okay? If I hear the phrase, one more time I'm going to probably puke, functional training. Now, that's just a spin word, okay? That's politics right there. Functional training. What is functional training? Well, functional training be anything, all right? But the truth of the matter is, what is more functional than the Olympic lifts? I can't think of any exercise out there that's more functional that engages the whole kinetic chain through triple extension, through the core, all the way up through athletically, which athletics is all about movement now. I can't think of anything that's more functional than that, okay? Now, I'm not trying to badmouth physical therapists or anything like that because they all do a good job at what they do, but we're strength coaches and we're trying to improve performance here, okay? And we're also trying to get, there's aspects that we incorporate that actually help prevent injury, but not if we try to become physical therapists, okay? So, and I'll get into that here in a little while, but another functional weapon, or what is the most functional exercise? Well, it's just what I told you. Another functional weapon, the hill. So, if we look at this, oops, and now I love the hill. We built this at our practice facility, okay? This baby is right at a 45-degree angle. It's got about a 30-meter sprint path. Why do I like it? Well, we all like stadium steps. This is better. Why? Because you get a natural foot plant. So you load your gastric and your soleus big time, and guess what else you can do? You can do all of these other things now because I get a natural foot plant. So now I don't have to just run forward or maybe do some slides up steps and things. Now I can run forward, backward, I can speed skate, I can skip. I can do all of those aspects like that. And as a result, I get a lot, I get a lot of what I would call functional training because I view this as one of those means of transferring the strength and power we've achieved in the weight room and putting it into motion. Okay? Now, the problem with this is, if you live in a very flat area and you can't afford to build a $50,000 or $60,000 hill, okay, what am I going to do? Now, if you live in a hilly area, you can just use the hills. Pick out 30 meters, okay? But if I live in a very flat area, well, you probably have a stadium. So guess what you can probably do? Build a ramp up one side of those steps. You can build a ramp, have your shop class, do whatever you want to do. Build a ramp up there, turf it, okay? Have it portable so you can take it on and off of the steps there. But you can build that same scenario where you get that foot plant then. And you can do a lot of these exercises, okay? So the hill I love. Now the other parts of the hill too is you know, we're not just confined to lower body development or lower body power and explosion and things like that. And by the way, your imagination is your only deterrent here as far as what you can do on the hill. Just think about things you can do. You know, we get advanced, we start making them run with their hands behind their head and things like that too, to take their arms out of it and to create more power. You can create, you know, all kinds of different scenarios here. And we always love the machine guns, obviously, and the monster machine guns where we got a really wide base and everything too. But this right here is a leg workout. You walk off this, you think you just did a huge squat routine, okay? So now as you're administering something like this, what you want to be sure and do now is we would do a heavy and a light day on legs in the weight room. So on our heavy day, we do like a one-setter on the hill. But then the next time we did a leg day, we do a much lighter day, okay? And we do a heavy, like 3 to 4 setter on the hill of different components. Okay, so upper body here. Let's do bear crawls down. Now, that's not so bad. I mean, you got to stabilize. Your shoulders have to stabilize big time. Your core has to stabilize. Going back up's a little different though. All right? Big strength component. All right? We can do it every direction. We can do it sideways, and therefore we're stable. Core. Okay? So I'm not saying this replaces all your upper body stuff, but it's a piece you can add, and it's movement too, by the way. Okay? Now these right here, these are easy going down, and they're easy going back up, actually. They're not too bad. Little crab walks. Look at this guy now, though. Let's see what he does here. Did I stop him? I don't even know if I have it, but going down sideways on those babies is a whole different ballgame. Because, yeah, here, let me. Yeah, here you go. He's not having any fun. Okay. But this is good work. Shoulder stabilization, core demands, you know, overall body control. Okay? These are all parts of what's going on here. And so it's a great tool from that standpoint. All right, so now we get into some things that have really become popular, and you'll see a lot of NBA guys are doing a lot of this stuff. And I understand it, but on the same hand, it's just, like I said, it's just a piece of the puzzle. It's not the full picture. And so when I get into this, and I want to say things like, you know, proprioception and mobility and corrective exercises and all these things, they have a place. They're valid. But they're a very small piece of the puzzle. So let me give you a little stat here, okay? In the 17 years I was with the Spurs, we had a total of 2 knee surgeries. 2. And I want an asterisk by both of them, okay? Because they deserve an asterisk. They both happened in the same year, the year 2000, right after the lockout year. Timmy Duncan was one. He tore his lateral meniscus, slight tear in his lateral meniscus right at the end of the regular season in 2000. Here's the asterisk. The summer, after we won it in '99, that summer, he took 2 weeks off. He went immediately into USA basketball. They do not lift. He came back, he took 2 weeks off, we went right into camp. He had no off-season program. He had an off-season program for the rest of his career after that, but no off-season program there, okay? And at the end, it caught up with him. Okay. The other guy was in the exact same year, Malik Rose, okay, who was hurt in the very last game of the season in the playoffs against Phoenix on almost the last play of the game, where a guy fell into him after he had come down with a rebound, fell directly back into his knee. We thought, oh no, it's a triple. It's an ACL, MCL, PCL. And I think it ended up being, when they went in with the MRI, the crazy part was, I think it was an MCL, but it really wasn't it wasn't anything, because his ligaments were so strong that instead he pulled the bone away. Okay? So the bone broke before the ligaments went. And the orthopedic laughed at him. He says, this is the easiest surgery I've ever done in my life. All he had to do was take the bone, he screwed it back in, didn't have to do any harvest or anything like that to repair the ligament. He was done. Okay? And no issues thereafter. That's it. All right? Now, what's that tell you? Well, I'm going to tell you this right now. We train, when I was there, we trained for performance. Okay? When strength and conditioning first started as a pretty viable thing in Division I and everything, they started to do a lot of research, and they started to determine, well, my God, you know, guys that are lifting, they get hurt less, and guys that are lifting, if they do get hurt, they don't get hurt as bad, and oh, by the way, guys that are lifting, if they get hurt, they come back quicker and things like that. Well, you know what the research was based off of? It's based off of guys that were training for performance. Now, if you think about that, that makes a lot of sense, okay? If I'm training a guy to be strong and powerful and explosive in the movements of his sport or her sport, they're probably going to be less likely to get injured because they're training for those types of scenarios, okay? Now, that said, like I said, there is merit to other aspects like proprioception, mobility, corrective exercises, and stuff like that. But when we're in the weight room, we got to focus on strength, power, explosion. So what I did through the years was, because time was such an issue, we started to incorporate some of these other components, which I felt had value, into our warm-ups, okay? And that way we could take care of a lot of that aspect through the warm-ups. And you can, like I said, train additional core through that. So, you know, we got things like, you know, that other one was dynamic movement warm-up, which you guys all know. But, you know, this right here, this is, you know, just proprioception. Now, we're on disc. We're training balance and strength here, and core also. And here's the story. When we're training this way, this is my philosophy, is you add balance into the equation, and your progression is you go from flat floor, okay, to no shoes on a flat floor, to no shoes, eyes closed on a flat floor, to pillow, flat pillow, okay, which is unstable to a degree, with shoes, then no shoes, eyes closed, and then you go to the disc, shoes, eyes closed. Okay, now that's pretty heavy progression at the end there on the disc, okay? But when you're doing these, the key aspects is you create distraction, okay? You want to create distraction. So the distraction that you just saw was the guys having to move through different planes of motion with a med ball. It can be all kinds of different things. You can put basketballs in their hands. You can put a football in their hands. You can do whatever you want, but create distraction and make them stabilize there and work their core and their muscles there, and also their, you know, their balancing aspect with distraction. Agility, speed ladder, we'd incorporate all these types of things into our warm-up too. These are all things that we, you know, are all familiar with. But I think it's also important as we move forward now in this field that we got to be able to monitor different aspects of what we're doing. Now, we've always monitored, okay? But there's different things that are starting to develop that maybe help us a little bit more. One would be, are you guys all familiar with Catapult at all? It's a tracking, it's like a GPS tracking system. It fits into the back of a shirt. It tracks basically the total load, explosion patterns, all these types of things. Now, this is an expensive proposition for a lot of people. So for a high school, this is not really a real viable scenario. But for us, we started using Catapult because it was starting to give us some information in regards to how much load were we using throughout the year and stuff like that. But I really feel that as I go back and I look at this aspect right here, like logging all of these different, how many sprints I ran, how many miles I accumulated in a game or whatever the scenario might be. If I really wanted to find out if a guy was overtrained, I had to use my experience, or another good way would be, why don't we just do cortisol? Let's just figure out, let's figure out benchmarks and do cortisol. I'll bet that'd give us a pretty good idea rather than buying a whole system like this. Okay? So that's another option. But I think, a lot of us, if you've had experience and you watch and you know what you're watching for, you know if guys are tired. It's just like functional movement screens. What are functional movement? I screen a guy every day in the weight room. When you're lifting a guy, aren't you screening him? Heck yes, you're screening him. All right? So functional movement screens, what do? I don't know. I mean, I think there's some value to them, but the truth of the matter is this. They're very cookie cutter. Okay? And I will tell you also that experiences I've had with them didn't identify a lot of problems that we had with new guys coming in. And the funny thing too is that all of my guys that have been with me scored off the charts on the functional. Well, that made me happy. I figured we were functional. At least we're training them to be functional. But the truth of the matter is we had a situation with a pulled hamstring where we're doing a functional movement screen, and there was no indication of it. And I mean, we knew it. We did the MRI. It wasn't a strain. It was a pull. All right, it was a tear, and we had to PRP it and everything like that, and we knew that going in, but no indication, even like on hip mobility or anything like that it was it. So what are they identifying? Well, I don't think functional movement screens can identify a whole lot for you unless they're specific to the sport you're dealing with. Okay, then all of a sudden I think there might be some value, but now that's not cookie cutter anymore. See, that's something completely different. Now you're trying to figure out, what are the movements of this sport and how do they function in these movements? And it's got a lot to do with not just single plane or very basic rudimentary types of motions, but also stops and starts and all these other aspects too. So, logging workouts. I mean, you got to keep track of what you're doing. And I know probably all of you guys do that, but I just want to throw out, it's important. You got to log your workouts. You got to know what you did last time. You got to know what you're doing this time, and you got to keep track of those things. It's very, very important. And then video capture products and software are pretty cool, actually. And some of these are a lot less expensive that you can utilize now. Now, for years, like Dartfish was out there, but it was kind of complicated to use, and you had to get cameras and all this setup for it. And it was kind of detrimental, or it kind of maybe left a lot of people not wanting to use it because it was so hard to deal with and set up and everything like that. There's a product out there right now called Spark Motion that all you got to do is join for a certain amount a month, and it's not expensive. It's like $5–10 a month or something like that. You take your iPad, you film it, you got all the components of Dartfish on there. You can do all your graphing, all your angles, all your stopwatch, start, stop. It's got voice recorded video where if you wanted to pass it on to an athlete, you can coach them through something, okay, on it. And it's very, very reasonable, okay? So it's something that even a high school could utilize very, very effectively. Okay? Recovery. All right. This is as important as anything we do, and sometimes we fail to acknowledge this, but recovery is so important. And where I was, it's even more important because we're playing 82 games, we're traveling all over God's world, we're playing a game, we're getting immediately onto a plane, we're flying to the next city, right? What's that do for recovery? Well, we go from being dehydrated up into a plane that makes us dehydrated even more. We get in, our sleep patterns are all screwed up, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So recovery is huge. But it's huge for everyone, all right? It's huge for everyone. And what a lot of people don't realize, and we get really caught up, I think, a lot of times, we've got to work. Well, guess what? Most of your cellular adaptations happen when you're recovering, okay? During that rest period. And if you don't allow that to happen, then your workouts aren't going to be nearly as efficient. Now, you're probably, if you follow basketball and if you follow the Spurs at all, you're probably aware that Pop, is very big on limiting guys' minutes and things like that. He's also very big on recovery, obviously, from that standpoint, too. And so, what we started to do is we started to look into all the different aspects of recovery, and here's what we know. These are the only two absolutes, okay? Nutrition and sleep, okay? Those are paramount for recovery. You've got to get the nutrients into the system, carbohydrates as well as protein, into the system immediately after a game, immediately after practice. You've got to eat well the rest of the time also. It's fuel, okay? And you got to sleep. There's all kinds of adaptations that happen in sleep, especially for the brain. And there is a ton of research that's being done right now in places like Stanford and stuff, as far as athletics goes, that would verify a lot of the importance of sleep as far as recovery would go. But these are the only two things that scientifically, really, we can prove, or that we have valid information on. 8 hours of sleep, if you have less than that, it's almost like oxygen debt. Okay? It's just like, you got to catch up. And once you catch up again, maybe you sleep for 12 or 14 hours some night, and you're caught up, then you're all right again. But until that, it's an issue, okay, especially for an athlete. Nutrition, we always said fuel the tool. Your body's your tool, fuel the tool, okay? Post-workout and competition nutrition, obviously very important. The window is important. Supplements can play a major role, and I'm not against supplements. You just got to make sure they're clean, okay, and that they're good quality. Because you can get a lot of crap, even at like a GNC or whatever, that they make themselves, and they're using poor raw materials on so they can make them cheaper. You want to get good quality supplements and utilize them. But what I do like about supplements is, for example, they can be very targeted. So they can actually, if you're taking them in that post-workout window in there, they can actually maybe get to the cellular level even quicker than regular food can, which is a good plus to add to it. Now, I'm not saying replace food with them. I'm just saying add them to your mix if you can. Okay. But then also remember, the final statement there is that a poor diet supplemented is still a poor diet. Okay. So if an athlete's not eating right, you can supplement all you want. Doesn't matter. It ain't going to get you the results you want. Okay? Protocols that may have promise for recovery, and some of these people have been doing for a while, but the one that's really starting to make hay is the compression aspect. Compression sleeves, especially for the legs and stuff like that, seem to help move stuff out of the system quicker and seem to have some value to it. There's some research that would indicate that. Hydro protocols in the water, obviously unloading people and things like that, and also decompressing the body, okay? There's a guy out of Boston named Igor Burdenko, whose dad died in Stalingrad in World War II, and this guy's in his 80s, but this guy's the guru on water. He took McHale and all these other guys with the Celtics through it for years, okay? But he would tell you that deep water work decompresses that spine because it's weightless in there, and to do that on a fairly regular basis. Now you got to get in deep water. You can't have your feet touching, okay? So you can wear, flotation stuff, but to do different core things in there and movement things in there will help decompress the body and has great results for it. And his whole philosophy is he does in the water, he does the same things on land. So he has this dual approach, okay? Have athletes log recovery, sleep and nutrition. I think it's a good idea. If we're going to log our workouts, why not log your recovery? Why not have athletes kind of own up to what they're doing? What are they eating? All right? How much are they sleeping? Keep track of it, because maybe, if they're honest enough, you can find out maybe this guy's having a problem right now. Well, maybe this is why. Okay? So I think it's a good idea to probably try to get that involved with your program and your athletes. Okay, another one on here that I haven't really talked about is massage. I like massage myself, but there would be indications that it helps some people, other people it doesn't do much for. okay? So we can't say that it's a definite, but I think there's a lot of value to massage and myofascial release and all these other aspects, okay? Personally, okay? And that's where we're at. So I want to open it up right now and questions, if we have any here. So let me get down here. Any questions on? Yeah.
The hill that you guys made, was that concrete?
We made it out of steel, actually. The one, we had one before, we made it out of wood, and we had it at a college because we didn't have our training facility at the time. We were working out in Incarnate Word College, actually, at the time. And they had a wood one there that we built, and they didn't take care of it and rotted out. Now, you can have a wood one, you just got to take care of it, okay? And it's a lot less expensive than a steel one, obviously. And, you know, to tell you the story on our steel one, I wanted this when we first moved into our practice facility. It was slated. We had it, and our GM put it off for a couple of years. And I said, "Where's my hill?" He said, "Well, is there value?" And I said, "Sure." And I went through all this. He says, "Okay." And so he started, and it was like it had tripled. Steel had tripled at that point in time. So I was building our hill at that course. You're in the NBA, so they don't really care, you know. But the bottom line is, you know, if we'd have done it right away, it would have been a lot less expensive. But you know, there's ways to get around that on a stadium too. You just got to make your own little makeshift ramp, okay? Just make sure it's safe, okay? You got it anchored well and everything like that, okay? Yeah.
What kind of grade is on that?
It's a 45-degree grade with, it's right at a 45-degree grade with a 30-meter sprint path. So if you got those dimensions, you know exactly where you're at. Now, do you have to have a 45-degree? No. Okay, and would I go more than that? No, that's the limit. Now, the other thing that we got to understand here too now, on the hill, everything we do up is all out. It's a sprint. It's whatever, okay? We walk down. We never run down that baby. We walk down, okay? Another thing we use that hill for, by the way, too, we use it during rehab, and we'll use it for ankle mobility. Okay, so you think about walking up that hill forwards and backwards and coming down it and also sideways and things like that. Ankle mobility, really mobbing the ankles. And it's a great way to get guys ready before practice and stuff like that too, just to get everything firing that way and get mobile. Okay.
Is there anything on top of that?
Yeah, we had like a running surface on ours, but the original one had AstroTurf on it. The wood one did. Okay. Yeah.
You talked about philosophy, having a philosophy. What is your philosophy?
My philosophy is, okay, strength is the key, okay? We have to create strength in the athlete. And my philosophy on strength is we start from the ground up and the inside out, and my core lifts are going to be the Olympic lifts because they train in that mode, okay? Take a look at this now. If you wanted to look at every aspect, this is why I say all these other things are like a little piece of the puzzle, like correctives or whatever you want to talk about, okay? But look at every aspect of sports performance, and you want to go through, you want to draw a circle, whether it be speed, whether it be jumping, whether it be agility, whether it be flexibility. Strength is a component in every one of those things. Now, all of these other things aren't a component in all of the same circles. I mean, the one thing that's the common denominator is strength has to be there. So where do you have to spend the most time? Strength. It's got to be there. Now, if you're working guys through a full range of motion, then you're also creating mobility and strength and mobility and these other aspects and muscular balance if we're doing it the right way too, right? Those are great. That's a great start right there. Okay? Yeah.
How frequently did you guys use the hill for workouts?
We'd use it, you know, depending on, now, we went pretty much to a 3-day split toward the last 3 or 4 years that I was there just because I liked it more. But we would use it lower body twice and upper body once then, that way, okay? And like I said, I varied it. We'd have a heavy hill day and a light hill day, a heavy leg day in the weight room, a light leg day on the heavy hill day, okay? In the off season, the other thing, you know, I want to tell you something here. You know, I'll tell you a little story real quick here is you know, David Robinson, who was there when I was there from his rookie year actually as a consultant, but you know, he had the back scenario, okay, and let me tell you what happened with his back is he developed a hernia in the off season. This wasn't lifting or anything like that. He had a little hernia right at the end of the season, And he chose not to have the surgery until after the Olympics that year, okay, because he wanted to play in Atlanta in the Olympics. So right after the Olympics, he had the surgery, and then he came into camp, and I said, well, we got to be looking. They're playing him. And he blew his back out, all right? So that's not to say neither here nor there. I mean, what I want to tell you about this is the franchise, all right? So we're sending him all over. We want to get everybody's extra, and he's out at this Curlin Job clinic out in L.A., and I mean, Dr. Watkins and all these people out there, and they're looking at him. They said, well, he doesn't have to have surgery, it looks like, but he's going to have to go a very extended rehab. And so I'm back and forth all the time because he's the franchise. And we're going through, and their physical therapists are very good, and it was really interesting for me because I got, got a lot of insight into that aspect. And there were a lot of things that I got from them that I used for years after that. And, that's the other part about our profession is I've stolen everything I use, by the way. I'm no original thinker here. I steal. I'm a thief, all right? But I know what I like, and I know what works for me, okay? And I know what works in a system. But they had a lot of good ideas, but we got to this point, we got to this sticking point now where all of a sudden we're trying to get David onto the court, and he ain't ready, okay? And I keep telling Pop, I said, we got to start doing more strength things. We got to start doing less, just core functional stuff like that. We got to start doing some real stuff and get him ready. And he's hesitant, and I'm going back and forth, and I'm talking with them, and they're going, I says, look, I got to get him stronger or he's never going to get back on the court. Well, he's just got to retrain a lot of things. And I says, like what? They said, well, he just can't be reaching like this. And I said, wait a minute. I said, you're going to tell me that if we have a loose ball, David Robinson's going to run over that loose ball, squat down, pick that baby up, and throw it. I says, you're not, so. And I was nice about it. But the truth is, that's how they thought at that point in time. Well, obviously that's not the truth. I mean, he's going to be in compromised positions, so we got to get him as strong as possible. And when Pop finally bought into that, then he started to make gains. Now, what did we do? Okay? Well, we started working a lot more strength work and heavier strength work. We started cleaning again, all right? Now, people said, oh, you're crazy. This guy's 7 foot, he's got a back problem, and you're cleaning, he's the franchise? And maybe I was crazy. I don't know. But the truth of the matter is, if you want to break it down, look at the core work. Look at the stabilization that's required on the catch, okay? Look at all of those aspects right there, and they're all in an athletic pattern, okay? What better way to rehab a guy? Now, we're not trying to, beat the world here with different aspects as far as trying to, set Olympic records with weightlifting or anything. We're starting light, and we're going through, and we're relearning and everything like that. But the truth of the matter is, that's how we got him over the hump. Okay, any other questions there? All right. Well, I appreciate your time.